You may have my body, but you'll never have my heart on our wedding night. Victoria Blackwood lay in bed, turning her face away from me. With a cold, proud tone, she delivered that line. I couldn't help but laugh. I tilted her delicate chin up and replied in a roguish tone, "Your body is all I want. What would I do with your heart?" "You bastard," she cursed, furious. My marriage to Victoria Blackwood, the heiress of the Blackwood family, was one of convenience. At the wedding, her soulmate Ethan Hayes stood guard at the entrance of the banquet hall, his eyes fixed on us as we exchanged rings. Victoria deliberately avoided his gaze the entire time, yet crystalline tears streamed down her face, splashing onto the magnificent dress. The great Miss Blackwood clearly had her heart set on someone else, but was forced to marry me. All because our two companies were in a tight partnership. For the sake of profit, our families arranged the marriage. And for Victoria to gain her freedom, she not only had to marry me, but also bear my child. To put it bluntly, our companies needed this child as a bond. The child was the main point. Our marriage was secondary. Victoria's so-called soulmate was Ethan Hayes. Ethan was fully aware of the arrangement and had even nodded in agreement. The plan was for them to get back together after our child was born. To me, the whole situation was absolutely insane, but with billions of dollars on the line for our two companies, I had to go along with it. That night, in our bridal suite, Victoria and I prepared to consummate the marriage. She lay on the bed, her beautiful eyes averted, refusing to meet my gaze. "You may have my body, but you'll never have my heart," she declared, her voice firm. I just laughed at her words. I lifted her chin. "Your body is all I want. What would I do with your heart?" I responded dismissively. "You bastard," my words didn't faze me, but they certainly got to her. She glared at me, her teeth clenched as if she wanted to tear me apart. I remained unbothered. Every word I'd said was the truth. Our marriage was founded on mutual benefit. Once the child was born, we would go our separate ways. I couldn't care less where she went. Ignoring the beauty's fury, I leaned down and savored every inch of her skin. Funny thing is, Victoria was once the object of my unrequited love. I had mustered all my courage to confess to her back then, only to be rejected flatly. And yet, here she was, lying in the same bed with me. As we made love in the villa's bridal suite outside, Victoria's soulmate, or rather, my wife's soulmate, Ethan Hayes, had followed us all the way from the wedding. Right now, he was standing outside the main gate like a statue, staring silently up at our bedroom window. I knew he was there, and so did Victoria. She let him keep his vigil, as if this was some grand gesture to prove their undying love. But who was this woman beneath me, with her hazy eyes and flushed cheeks, moaning a melody of passion? Victoria was completely lost in the moment, her head in the clouds, her hands unconsciously gripping mine as she surrendered to our intimacy. Loyal to her love? Yeah, I didn't buy it. And the guy outside? The man who could watch his girlfriend marry someone else, knowing she would sleep with another man night after night until a child was conceived. What a real character. Did he truly love Victoria? I had my doubts about that too. Forget everything else. If my girlfriend were about to marry another man and have his child, I'd be long gone. Or if she gave me the slightest nod, I'd elope with her in a heartbeat. The world is what you make it. Who's afraid of whom these days? I would never let anyone force me into something I didn't want to do. In short, there's no way I'd stand by and watch my girlfriend spend her nights with another man. I just couldn't wrap my head around their logic. Or maybe there was another possibility. Maybe Ethan didn't love Victoria at all. Maybe he was only after her status and the Blackwood family fortune, which would explain why he didn't care about any of this. I'm a businessman, steeped in the reek of money. I'm used to analyzing people's motives through the lens of profit. Victoria, let's go again. The initial excitement hadn't faded. She was the girl I'd longed for in my youth, and now that my wish had come true, I couldn't contain the thrill. But afterwards, something shocked me. After our passionate encounter, a crimson stain was visible on the pristine white sheets. I stared at it, my brow furrowed in disbelief. "Whoa, you've never slept with a man before?" I exclaimed in surprise. No wonder she had cried out like that at first. She was a virgin. But everyone said she and her devoted lover were madly in love, so what was this virginity all about? I have principles, Victoria sniffed, giving me a sideways glance. I wouldn't just mess around with anyone before marriage. Pfft, I smirked, teasing her instinctively. I don't believe you. You had it restored, didn't you? You're the one who's restored. She was furious again, a mix of shame and anger. She grabbed my arm and bit down. I honestly didn't expect her to be a biter. Ouch, I believe you. I believe you let go. It actually hurt. After some coaxing, she finally released me. Later, I snuggled up close to her, unable to resist gossiping about her and her old flame. So if you weren't sleeping together, what did you two actually do? At this, Victoria seemed even prouder. Ethan and I have a spiritual connection. When we were together, it was mostly about emotional communication. He respects me, and he understands me. Not like you. All you see is money, and you're so rough with me. Okay, I admit I was a bit hasty earlier, but I had assumed the heiress was experienced, not a complete ingenue. My bad, my bad. Thinking back on my clumsiness, I felt a pang of regret. I'd been unfair to this innocent young woman. At the same time, my admiration for the guy outside grew. Not only had he never touched Victoria, but he could also stand by and watch her marry and sleep with me. His self-control was truly impressive. The two of them seemed to have reached a love so profound it transcended the physical, seeking only a union of souls, truly a love for the ages. I even started to discard my earlier suspicions about their financial motives, gradually coming to believe their love was real. I even found myself planning to personally hand Victoria over to Ethan after the baby was born, offering them my sincerest blessings. I didn't understand their logic, but I chose to respect it. Rumble. A clap of thunder suddenly echoed outside. Ethan is still outside. Victoria, who had been snuggling in my arms, quickly sat up and started dressing. It's about to rain, she said hurriedly. I have to go see him, tell him to leave. I was moved by their soulmate love. Hearing the rain begin to fall, I quickly reminded her. Put on another layer. Don't catch a cold. Oh, and remember to take an umbrella. I was genuinely afraid they'd stage some tragic melodrama in the rain to prove the greatness of their love. After all, Victoria had to carry my child. Until the baby was born, I needed to make sure she took care of herself. Yes, I know, she gave me a complicated look, then nodded lightly, grabbed a coat, and walked out of the bedroom. My wife was going out to meet her old lover, and not only was I calm about it, I was even giving her caring advice. If anyone who didn't know the situation saw us, they'd probably think we were a deeply loving, devoted couple. The rain outside grew heavier. In the end, I was still worried, so I went to the balcony to watch. I saw Victoria, holding an umbrella, walk up to Ethan Hayes and say a few quiet words. Ethan nodded and turned to leave, but not before glancing up in my direction. His gaze was deep, tinged with a hint of helplessness. I knew very little about this Mr. Soulmate, nor did I care to. A man who would agree to let his girlfriend marry and have a child with another man only to get back together later was not a man I considered worth my time to investigate. After sending Ethan off, Victoria immediately returned to the villa. Back in bed, she solemnly assured me, "Don't worry. Ethan and I both have our limits. I won't run away with him, and he would never ask me to do something like that. And even when we meet in private, he will never touch me. Ethan is the most restrained man in the world. Only after our baby is born will he truly be with me." What the hell? My brain froze for a few seconds after hearing that. Was I out of touch with the times, or were these two just completely insane? I simply couldn't agree with their mindset, but ultimately it was none of my business. My duty was simply to have a child with her, firmly binding the interests of our two companies to create more value. After the child was born in a year, whether she stayed or left was entirely up to her. That night, Victoria and I slept in each other's arms. Cuddled against my chest, she slept exceptionally soundly. The next day, I went to the Blackwood Corporation to fully integrate our business operations. On my way to the restroom, I happened to run into Ethan Hayes. Logically, since I'd stolen his girlfriend and spent the night with her, he should have looked at me like I'd murdered his father. The hatred for a man who steals your wife is comparable to the hatred for your father's killer, after all. But that's not what happened. Ethan just clenched his fists, then scurried away from me as if he'd seen a monster. Being new to Blackwood Corp, most employees didn't recognize me. They started whispering about Ethan right in front of me. Hey, Team Leader Hayes is such a pathetic case. He worked so hard for the company, only to be dumped by the chairman's daughter. Yeah, he was with Miss Blackwood for so long, but in the end their social statuses were just too different. It never would have worked. Such a shame. I used to ship them so hard, but a guy as great as Team Leader Hayes won't have trouble finding a new girlfriend. It's the chairman's daughter who'll regret it for sure, missing out on a guy like him. Listening to their gossip, I realized how popular Ethan actually was at the company. And he sounded quite ambitious too, but in my eyes, a man who would agree to let his girlfriend marry another man first, have a baby, and then get back together, could not be considered a good man. No matter how excellent he was in other aspects, he failed my test. Anyway, I couldn't understand their way of thinking, and I couldn't shake the feeling that by simply following my family's arrangement, I had somehow unwittingly become the villain of the story. I mean, think about it. I was rich, handsome, and powerful, and I had stolen Ethan's girlfriend. If our story were a novel, I would be the archetypal villain keeping the main characters apart. Ethan would be the tragically tormented male lead, and Victoria the heroine entangled with the villain. In the future, after the male lead's heart is broken and he leaves, the heroine will have a sudden realization and launch a campaign of crazed revenge against me. Hiss. I shuddered as this melodramatic plot played out in my head. Life really is like a drama. Of course, this was all just my imagination running wild, not to be taken seriously. But some people seemed determined to cast me in that villainous role. At lunch, I took Victoria to a nearby restaurant. As a married couple, eating alone together is perfectly normal, right? I like to joke around. I told a joke during the meal that made Victoria giggle. But this scene was interpreted very differently by certain people. Ethan Hayes and several colleagues happened to walk in just then. Ethan stopped in his tracks, his fists clenched, staring intently at us. After a moment, he spun around and fled, as if he'd seen a viper. He looked completely wounded. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at Victoria across the table. She just shook her head and smiled. It's fine. Ethan will understand my ass. What I meant was, she needed to handle this, if necessary, send Ethan abroad for a while. Having him right under our noses pulling stunts like this was just annoying. After Ethan left, one of the women with him stayed behind and strode over to our table. She was strikingly beautiful, her looks easily rivaling Victoria's. Mr. Clark, you're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Is it fun for you to humiliate team leader Hayes like this? She accused. For fuck's sake, my brow furrowed instantly. Humiliate him. Was telling a joke a crime now? Who is she? I asked Victoria. Before Victoria could answer, the woman introduced herself. My name is Vivian Donovan. I'm a colleague of team leader Hayes. Just a colleague? Would a mere colleague stand up for him like this? Miss Donovan. I enunciated each word carefully. Normally, I wouldn't waste my breath on you, but since you've come over to accuse me, I have a couple of things to say. First, we are having a normal meal. We are not targeting anyone. Second, on what grounds are you accusing me? Or let me put it this way, who are you to Mr. Hayes? All I did was tell a joke, and I get accused. This was ridiculous, and if this Vivian was willing to fight his battles, she must have some connection to him. Hearing my second point, Victoria's expression hardened. Miss Donovan, you've crossed a line, she said, her tone equally sharp. Our business is none of your concern. It's not your place as an outsider to meddle. Both of our faces had turned cold. Vivian was speechless. I then waved over the restaurant manager. Manager, someone is harassing us here. The manager rushed over and began to escort Vivian away. That Clark guy, you dare treat me like this? Just you wait, she threatened before finally leaving. From her tone, she was clearly furious. Later, I had someone look into her. It turned out this Vivian Donovan was from the wealthy Donovan family of South Haven. The reason this heiress was at Blackwood Corp was apparently for Ethan Hayes. Furthermore, she was planning to leave Blackwood Corp and fund a startup with him. Could it be she's the devoted second female lead? After reading the background check on Vivian, I couldn't help but slip back into my melodrama plotline. In these angsty novels, there's always a second female lead to pick up the pieces of the male lead's broken heart. The more I thought about it, the more Miss Vivian Donovan seemed to perfectly fit the role. The days went by. Then Victoria found out she was pregnant. She intercepted me at the office, handing me an ultrasound report. I'm pregnant, she said with a relaxed smile. 3 weeks. I took the report, glanced at it, and did a quick mental calculation. 3 weeks ago was our wedding night. This child was most likely conceived then. Congratulations. You're going to be a father, she said again, her smile natural and easy. Congratulations to you too. My smile was just as natural. You're going to be a mother. In that moment, we weren't like husband and wife, but more like comrades in arms. Not far away, Ethan Hayes was watching us. his eyes a swirling mix of sorrow, helplessness, and other unreadable emotions. Vivian Donovan stood by his side. Hiss. Ethan took a deep breath, and the tension in his brow suddenly relaxed as if he had finally let go of his obsession. He turned to Vivian and, after a pause, asked, "Vivian, you said before that you'd be willing to fund a startup with me. Does that offer still stand?" Vivian's eyebrows shot up, a smile instantly lighting up her eyes. "Ethan, dear," she replied briskly, "it looks like you've finally seen the light." "Yeah," Ethan grunted in response. That very day, Vivian submitted her resignation to HR. Ethan, however, did not. He came directly to me and slapped his resignation letter on my desk. "Mr. Clark." He looked at me, a sense of relief in his voice. "I'm letting go. This is my resignation. It needs Victoria's signature. You get it signed for me, and I'll leave immediately. I'll never appear before you two again." His eyes were filled with the finality of departure. Logically, I should have been thrilled that he was leaving on his own accord, maybe even adopted a smug, triumphant attitude. After all, his presence at the company had always been an annoyance. But my actual reaction was completely different. Resignations go through HR. "I don't handle them here," I said coolly, glancing up at him. "HR will just give the report to Victoria, and she'll never agree to let me leave," Ethan explained hastily, a hint of pleading in his voice. In other words, he wanted my help to get Victoria's signature without her knowing. What a joke. Did he really think I was some kind of ruthless villain who would do anything to get ahead? "Mr. Hayes, I'll say it again." My voice turned cold. "I don't process resignations here. Go through the proper channels." With that, I pressed the button on my intercom. "Mr. Peterson, come to my office and escort this person out." Ethan's face turned ashen. He clearly hadn't expected me to be so uncooperative, and it caught him completely off guard. Sincere Clark, he clutched his resignation letter, his voice thick with resentment and hatred. It was the first time he had shown such strong negative emotion toward me. "You only won because you were born into it. You're nothing without that. If it weren't for your parents, I would never have lost." Just as he finished, Mr. Peterson opened the door. Ethan shot me a venomous glare and stormed out. I just smiled. I didn't bother telling him that I graduated from Stanford, that I'd started a company with friends in college and made tens of millions without a single dollar from my parents. Nor did I mention that my father had several illegitimate children, or that my uncle's sons were fierce competitors for the position of heir. I had fought for my current position. Nothing was handed to me, just like now. I had already anticipated his resignation. I even knew that he and Vivian planned to start an import-export trading company, leveraging the Donovan family's shipping advantages. With the Donovans backing them, the company was likely to be profitable. The moment I called my assistant, my mind was already calculating. Should I register a few investment firms and quietly inject capital into their new company? I could grab a majority stake, and in the end, they'd just be working for me. I fought my way up through family competition. I was different from an only child like Victoria, who was the designated successor. But there was no need to waste my breath explaining any of this to Ethan Hayes. Right now, he wasn't even worth my time. Not long after, Ethan somehow managed to get Victoria's signature and successfully resigned. After leaving Blackwood Corp., he and Vivian started their import-export company. They hit the ground running, signing several major deals in quick succession. As for Victoria, she seemed unaffected. Regarding Ethan's departure, she once told me happily, "Ethan has gone off to start his own business. By the time our baby is born, his business will be a success, and he'll be able to come and get me in style." But Ethan had already given up on her, and she was still living in a fantasy of her own making. I really didn't know whether I should be the one to burst her bubble. After she became pregnant, we were still intimate occasionally, but as her belly grew, we gradually stopped. Victoria also began to notice that the distance between her and Ethan was growing. Strange. Staring at the chat window on her phone, where no new messages had been exchanged with Ethan for a long time, she finally realized that things were spiraling out of her control. "I can't believe it's been 3 months since I last saw or even texted Ethan," she murmured, lost in thought. I heard her. I walked over, sat down on the sofa next to her, and wrapped an arm around her, pulling her into my embrace. "Don't think about anything that makes you unhappy. My life's philosophy has always been to never waste energy on negative self-talk." Hearing this, Victoria seemed to realize something. She snuggled closer against my chest as if drawing warmth and affection from me. "Do you think Ethan and I will still get together?" she whispered. I knew that she probably already understood they had drifted apart. The plan to reunite after a year now seemed like a pipe dream. In my view, it had all been a ploy by her family to placate her love-struck mind. The one that got away, the first love. With the passage of time, those feelings always fade. If you can't forget, it's usually just because your current life isn't good enough. But I treated Victoria exceptionally well. I was patient. I supported her career. I was, by all accounts, an ideal partner for her. Besides, her many firsts, her first kiss, her first time being intimate were all with me. After we were married, to her, I was a memorable and ideal partner, a safe harbor for her heart, and a highly compatible physical match. It was only a matter of time before I replaced Ethan in her heart. Ethan, in fact, had seen this coming long ago. Ever since we got married, Victoria was always smiling whenever she was with me. Within a week, she had all but forgotten about Ethan. Her mouth might say she loved him, but her body was honestly leaning toward me. Her affections had been shifting ever since I came into the picture. It was because he saw all this that Ethan had left, completely dejected. Another 3 months passed. Victoria finally acknowledged the change in her own heart. Cradling her belly, she looked at me very seriously and said, "Sincere, I think I'm falling for you." "No." I chuckled softly. "The one you love is Ethan Hayes." "That's not right," she immediately denied it, then sighed, reminiscing. "Ethan and I, we were more like close companions. You could even call him my best guy friend. I'm an only child. My parents always taught me to be wary of opportunistic men who were after the Blackwood family fortune, so I was always guarded around guys. Then I met Ethan by chance. He didn't come from a wealthy family and had an inferiority complex from a young age. He always tried to avoid me at first, but the more he avoided me, the more interested I became, so I took the initiative to pursue him. Later, when he finally agreed to date me, he never dared to touch me. At this, Victoria gave me a playful smile and continued, "Actually, I lied to you. The reason I was a virgin before our marriage wasn't because I didn't want to, but because he refused. He said he had to wait until my parents approved of him before he could truly have me. He's too cautious, too concerned with what other people think. He'd beat himself up for ages over the smallest things. In that respect, you're completely different." The conversation suddenly shifted to me. A smile played on her lips as if she'd thought of something else. "You, on the other hand, are so shameless. You almost never care what others think, and you certainly don't get caught up in self-doubt. Since we've been together, I've had practically no worries. I just feel free with this incredible sense of carefree confidence." As she spoke, her smile brightened, and her eyes seemed to hold a galaxy of stars as she looked at me. She continued, "I admit it, I've been won over by your suave confidence. Now, I can't bear the thought of us separating." In short, she realized she didn't need Ethan after all and wanted to build a real life with me. A few months ago, she was swearing that I could have her body but not her heart. Now, she was willing to give me her heart as well. It might seem like a fickle turn of events, but in reality, the moment Victoria agreed to her parents' terms to marry me and have a child, the seeds of her separation from Ethan were sown. They just hadn't been able to see it at the time. Victoria watched me expectantly, clearly waiting for my response. "Okay," I responded calmly, then added in a gentle tone, "If you don't want to separate, then we won't. I'll be with you for the long haul." My stance was clear enough. After all this time together, I didn't see Victoria as some heartless woman who abandoned her first love. On the contrary, I felt the real problem was Ethan. From my few interactions with him, I found him not just cautious, but deeply insecure. When I first heard he'd agreed to let his girlfriend marry another man and have a child before getting back together, I thought his logic was bizarre. A man who loves so meekly doesn't earn respect. He just pushes his girlfriend further away. To put it bluntly, the root of the problem between him and Victoria was him. If he had been more resolute, if he'd acted like a man and firmly refused the arrangement, giving her the security she needed, they could have resisted together. Given how infatuated Victoria was back then, no one could have stopped them. You make your own destiny. You have to have a little fight in you, or you'll just end up as fish on someone else's chopping block. Based on all this, I thought Victoria's decision to leave Ethan and marry me was an extremely wise one. and so I was willing to try to build a real life with her. After that, Victoria and I grew closer, and her contact with Ethan ceased completely. As time went on, Victoria stayed home to focus on her pregnancy. She'd often sit on the sofa, gently stroking her growing belly, waiting for her husband to come home. Meanwhile, both the Clark and Blackwood families had subsidiary trading companies, and Vivian and Ethan were fiercely competing for their business. I turned a blind eye to it, letting them do as they pleased. At a business dinner one evening, I ran into Vivian and Ethan. "Mr. Clark, we meet again." Vivian, dressed in a strapless red gown and 10-centimeter stilettos, approached me with Ethan on her arm, raising her glass in a toast. When they first started their company, not only did Vivian provide the initial capital, but several investment firms also took notice and injected large sums of money. With this funding, they had managed to grow their company significantly in less than a year. Now their company, Starlight Trading, was valued at over $1 billion and was preparing for an IPO. They had achieved a fair amount of success. "Ms. Donovan, and you, Mr. Hayes. Long time no see." I raised my glass, lightly clinked it against hers, and offered a cool greeting. "I hear the Clark and Blackwood trading companies haven't been doing so well lately?" Vivian asked, a hint of smugness in her voice. "They're doing okay," I replied nonchalantly, my eyes scanning the room for someone I knew. Seeing my lack of interest, Vivian huffed. "Mr. Clark is as cold as ever," she said accusingly. "What, is the second daughter of the Donovan family of South Haven not worthy of a conversation with you?" I knew perfectly well that she was still holding a grudge from when I had her thrown out of that restaurant. "You jest, Miss Donovan," I said, my tone still flat. I offered a casual joke. "After all, I'm a married man. It's best to keep my distance from a beautiful woman like you." I was just trying to brush them off, but my words unexpectedly hit a nerve with Ethan. "Don't get too smug, Mr. Clark," he said, his face cold. "Believe it or not, after Victoria gives birth, all it will take is one phone call from me, and she'll come running back." I couldn't believe he was still so confident about his relationship with Victoria. He had no idea that now, Victoria couldn't fall asleep at night unless she was pressed up against me. And in less than 2 months, she would give birth. With a child to tie her down, she'd have even less time to be distracted by other men. This guy, Hayes, had a real talent for misjudgment. And as he said it, I clearly saw Vivian's face turn green with envy. Her hostility toward me seemed to vanish instantly. Vivian had put in the money, the effort, and the resources to help Ethan build his company. She'd obviously done it all because she wanted to be with him. I was tempted to remind Ethan to cherish the person by his side, but then I thought, it's not my problem. Victoria is waiting for me at home, if you'll excuse me. I couldn't be bothered to argue with them anymore. I downed my drink, placed the empty glass on a table, and walked away. From behind me, Ethan's taunts followed. "Victoria's heart will always be with me one day. She'll regret being with you and come back to me." Regret. Without turning back, I just smirked. Did he think this was some female-oriented web novel, where the heroine abandons her first love only to suddenly have regrets and go crawling back? What a dreamer. In the real world, as long as you're happy with your new partner, you don't think about the old one. I realized Ethan really was like the male lead in one of those novels, completely out of touch with reality. Their company's success was probably 90% Vivian's doing. A little over a month later, Victoria gave birth to a baby boy. "Hubby, look, our baby's nose, his mouth, his little ears. They're all just like mine, hee-hee." Indeed, the child's entire face bore a striking resemblance to Victoria. She was completely immersed in the bliss of her new family. When she received a text from Ethan asking to get back together, she glanced at me, quickly typed a reply, and then held up her phone to me, her voice earnest as she pledged her loyalty. "Hubby," I rejected him. I glanced at the screen. Her reply was blunt. "Sorry, I'm not leaving Sincere. I'm going to be with him forever. You should find someone else to love." But just rejecting him wasn't enough. Right in front of me, she deleted Ethan's number from her phone. "I've deleted him," she promised again. "I will never have any contact with him again." Victoria's world now revolved around me. Ethan Hayes was officially a thing of the past. After that, Ethan seemed to go crazy, aggressively competing for our company's business at every turn. His and Vivian's company soon went public successfully. Its market value multiplied several times over, approaching $10 billion. At another business dinner, a newly confident Ethan no longer spoke with his former restraint. His words were laced with barbs. "Sincere, that trading company you and the Blackwoods run together. It must be on the verge of bankruptcy by now, right?" In the past, such provocations usually came from Vivian. Ethan would only say something when pushed to his limit, and even then, his words lacked half of Vivian's bite. This time, Vivian wasn't by his side. She was across the room, chatting animatedly with other CEOs. I'd seen her a couple of times recently, and she no longer seemed to target me. She could even hold a calm conversation occasionally. "Mr. Hayes's company is growing bigger and bigger. Truly impressive," I replied, my voice still as calm as ever. Seeing that he didn't get the flustered reaction he wanted, Ethan pressed on. Don't think I don't know you're just putting on a brave face. Don't worry, this is just the beginning. Next, I plan to expand into other sectors. By the way, I hear your company plans to acquire a plot of land in the West End for a commercial district development. What a coincidence. I have the same idea." Now that Ethan's wings had grown, he was showing his claws. His tone was clearly aimed at me. "Ethan Hayes, I'd advise you not to be reckless," I warned him genuinely. But he was already blinded by revenge, a fierce fire burning in his eyes. "Ha! Scared? I'm going to defeat you step by step, and take everything you have hearing this." I just curled my lip into a slight smile and didn't pursue the topic. Across the room, Vivian's gaze kept flicking in our direction. When it landed on me, it would quickly dart away, her expression incredibly complex, a mix of resentment, unwillingness, and something else I couldn't quite decipher. As I was leaving the dinner, on my way home, Miss Donovan secretly intercepted my car, away from Ethan's sight. "We need to talk." She leaned down to the car window. The next second, the door opened, and she slid right in. The car started moving again. "Is there something you need, Miss Donovan?" I asked, my tone still neutral. She looked at me with that complex expression, paused, and bit her lip before replying. "All right, I admit it, you've won." Vivian had completely shed her former arrogance. Her voice was tinged with a kind of despair. It turned out that in Starlight Trading, she only held 15% of the shares, while Ethan held 17%. The vast majority was held by several investment firms. Vivian had only recently discovered that all these investment firms traced back to a single owner, the heir of the Clark family. Sincere Clark. The moment she found this out, she realized that she and Ethan had been trapped in my game all along. Now, watching Ethan still trying to provoke the game master seemed utterly ridiculous to her. "Let's work together." She paused, her tone probing. "I want control of Starlight Trading. Name your price, including me." At this point, Vivian had thought it all through. Ethan had never truly seen her, and his personality was stubbornly obstinate. Most of the company's deals were secured by her efforts alone. She had given up on fighting the man in front of me and instead wanted to align with him. To achieve her goal, she was even willing to offer herself. Most women are attracted to power, and Vivian was no exception. After witnessing the strategic mastery of the man before her, she no longer cared for Ethan. Instead, she developed a desire to claim this man for herself. And as it happened, I had plans to cooperate with her as well. I had intentionally let her find out the identity of the investment firm's owner. I had calculated that her patience with Ethan had worn thin, making it the perfect time to pull her over to my side. The Clark and Blackwood companies could also leverage the Donovan family's shipping resources to expand their business empire. Later, the car stopped by the riverbank, and we talked privately inside for a long time. At one point, the car rocked back and forth as if the people inside were having a heated argument. The driver, seeing this from a distance, wasn't the least bit worried. In fact, he grinned and chuckled to himself. When Vivian finally got out of the car, her face was flushed like a peach blossom, a look of satisfaction on her face that made her seem even more stunningly beautiful than usual. Another 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. Two major things happened in those 2 years. First, Starlight Trading underwent a major personnel change. Ethan Hayes, who had been riding high, was jointly dismissed by the shareholders, and Vivian Donovan took his place as chairman. Second, Ethan made a desperate move. He sold all his shares in Starlight, took out massive loans, and bought that plot of land in the West End at a premium, intending to develop the commercial district there instead of me. When he secured the land, many in the business world flocked to congratulate him. Ethan was at the peak of his career, utterly triumphant. However, soon after, news broke. The city's key development plans were not focused on the West End at all. The West End Commercial District project was dead in the water. The land Ethan had bought plummeted in value, losing more than 10 times its worth. In truth, the West End was never part of the city's development plan. I had deliberately leaked false information and had my people spread it online, making everyone believe the area was about to be developed. When it came to business strategy, Ethan Hayes was still miles behind. With this one gamble, he lost all the money from selling his shares and was now saddled with enormous debt. He had been in hiding ever since, afraid to show his face. On the day of my and Victoria's son Leo's second birthday party, Ethan reappeared. He stood at the entrance of the banquet hall, watching Victoria and me from afar, just as he had at our wedding 3 years ago. The difference was, back then, he hadn't yet experienced the ups and downs of the past 2 years, and his eyes were full of timidity. This time, he looked more mature, but his gaze was filled with resentment and regret. Ethan was now consumed by regret. He couldn't understand why he had been such a fool, agreeing to the Blackwood family's demands and watching Victoria marry someone else. If only he had been stronger back then. If he had stood firmly with Victoria, who could have stopped them? In the end, it was his own cowardice that had pushed the woman he loved into another man's arms. Security at the entrance blocked his way. He couldn't get in. In the end, all he could do was turn and leave, cloaked in failure and regret. After that, he fled the country, and we never heard from him again. Epilogue. Vivian Donovan also came to the birthday party. Sis. She smiled as she addressed Victoria. Happy birthday to Leo. Victoria returned a faint smile, not bothering to question why this woman was suddenly calling her sis so affectionately. After all, with several $100 million in dividends coming in each year, a not insignificant portion of that was thanks to Vivian's efforts. The end.